No one could have imagined that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, would find himself in a courtroom like any ordinary citizen, yet there he was, standing under the piercing gaze of Judge Roberts. The atmosphere was thick with tension as media. Cameras flashed outside, capturing the chaos of clashing chants from protesters and supporters. Inside, however, all attention was fixed on Musk, the room resembling the set of a high-stakes thriller. Reporters furiously typed on their laptops, each keystroke racing to capture the gravity of the moment. The court officer stood resolute, and at the center of it all sat Judge Roberts, stern, focused, and visibly unmoved, renowned in legal circles. For his zero-tolerance stance, especially against those he suspected of manipulating the system or acting above the law, Roberts showed no signs of leniency. For all his fame and fortune, Elon Musk would be no exception. As he entered the courtroom, there was none of his usual smirk or playful tweets, just a composed, serious presence that felt almost uncharacteristic. Clad in a tailored navy suit, Musk gave a quiet nod to his legal team before taking his place at the defense tables. Cameras weren't allowed inside, yet the tension was palpable, seeping through the walls. This wasn't about a failed business deal or a regulatory slap on the wrist. It was about accountability at the highest level. Judge Roberts had summoned Musk to face allegations that many believed could redefine how billionaires are held accountable under the law. The charges, still shrouded in scrutiny, centered around alleged market manipulation, misleading public investors, and actions that crossed not only legal boundaries but moral ones as well. The clerk announced the start of the proceedings, and Judge Roberts leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Mr. Musk," he began with measured calm, "you may be a man of significant influence, but in my courtroom, that influence ends at the door." A wave of gas swept through the room, but Musk remained unfazed. His lead attorney, a silver-haired veteran of high-profile corporate cases, stood to introduce the defense team. Judge Roberts listened in silence, unimpressed. There would be no backroom deals or special favors here. This wasn't Silicon Valley. It was a federal courtroom, and Judge Roberts was determined to make sure Musk understood that, and the world would see that even giants can fall if the law demands it. As opening statements began, it became clear that this courtroom showdown was just getting started. But no one, absolutely no one, could have anticipated just how explosive things would get, or that by the end of it, Elon Musk would be escorted out by order of the very judge now glaring at him from the bench. Even more shocking was what Musk said just before leaving the courtroom, a statement that left everyone speechless. The silence shattered into hushed murmurs as the prosecution rose, their expressions sharpened with anticipation. Unreadable yet confident, this was the moment everyone had been waiting for. What could possibly bring a man like Elon Musk into a courtroom, let alone put him at risk of being removed by a federal judge? The lead prosecutor, a poised and composed woman named Amelia Grant, stepped forward with a quiet intensity. Her voice was steady, but each word sliced through the silence of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "this case is not about innovation, nor is it about success. It is about responsibility. It is about what happens when unchecked power spirals into abuse." She gestured toward Musk without so much as a glance. "Mr. Musk is accused of deliberately manipulating the stock market, using his platform and influence, not merely through business strategies, but through public statements crafted to trigger volatility for personal gain." Screens flickered to life around the courtroom, illuminating with digital evidence. One by one, tweets appeared, some cryptic, some bold, all posted by Musk during pivotal financial moments. Among them, one tweet stood out in stark contrast. "Thinking of taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured." The courtroom buzzed with tension as eyes shifted back to Musk, the weight of his own words now displayed for all to see. Everyone had seen the tweet before, but today it was more than just a controversy. It was evidence. On the surface, it looks like a joke, Grant remarked, gesturing to the tweet, but billions of dollars moved that day. Investors lost millions, some made fortunes, and Mr. Musk, he watched it all unfold, fully aware of the chaos he had just triggered. She then presented internal emails from Tesla employees, filled with confusion and concern after Musk's announcement. Some admitted they had no knowledge of such plans, while others expressed fear of legal repercussions. The emails were laced with panic, a panic that now echoed through the courtroom. The evidence went far beyond market manipulation. Whispers had now taken form, suggesting that Musk had used his influence in conversations with government officials to steer policy decisions in favor of his companies. Notes and meeting records surfaced, some lacking full transparency, along with text messages hinting at a strategic influence campaign cloaked in charm and disruption. Judge Roberts occasionally raised an eyebrow but otherwise remained stoic, though the mounting evidence was hard to ignore. Musk sat motionless, eyes slightly narrowed, carefully absorbing every detail as it was presented. Then came the bombshell, an allegation that Musk had leveraged confidential research data from one of his lesser-known subsidiaries to sway decisions at SpaceX, decisions with potential national implications. The allegation extended to security. Partnerships. Still under investigation, but its mere mention sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Jury members exchanged glances, some already betraying signs of concern. Outside the courthouse, the public's roar grew louder as news leaked faster than it could be contained. The prosecution concluded with a final, resounding statement. This is not about punishing success. This is about protecting integrity. No one, no matter how brilliant, how wealthy, how revered, is above the law. The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before. Slowly, Elon Musk looked up, not at the judge, not at the jury, but directly at Amelia Grant. In that silent stare, a storm was brewing. The moment the prosecution rested, murmurs rippled through the courtroom like echoes after a stone hits water. All eyes turned to Elon Musk, the air thick with anticipation. Would he remain shielded behind his legal team, or would the world's most enigmatic tech titan choose to speak for himself? To everyone's surprise, including his own attorneys, Musk stood up. Judge Roberts raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Musk, you wish to speak?" "I do, Your Honor, with the court's permission," Musk replied, his voice calm yet thunderous in its impact. In a rare move, the judge granted it, especially unusual in a case of this magnitude, where every word could shift public opinion like a landslide. Musk stepped forward, unburdened by notes or screens, and looked directly at the jury. "I'm not a saint," he began, his voice steady, "but I'm not a villain either." The courtroom fell silent. "Yes, I've made bold statements. Some were jokes, some were hopeful dreams, but they were never lies meant to deceive. They came from a place of risk, vision, and sometimes desperation, to shake up stagnation." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. "I tweet like I think, spontaneously, recklessly, sometimes foolishly. But in a world where CEOs hide behind PR firms and legal filters, I chose transparency. I chose to speak directly to the people, to investors, to dreamers." In the back rows, people leaned forward, captivated. "I am guilty of dreaming too big," he continued, his voice growing stronger, "of believing that one man, one team, one company could push humanity forward. Yes, I disrupted markets, but not for greed, for progress." He turned to face Judge Roberts. "Your Honor, if this court is punishing audacity, then I stand guilty. But if it's seeking criminal intent, manipulation, or abuse of power, then I stand misunderstood." At that moment, his attorney finally rose, stepping in to support Musk's legal defense. Together, they methodically dismantled the accusations, one by one. Even the infamous funding-secured tweet was addressed, with evidence and context that aimed to shift the narrative. The defense presented internal discussions with international investors, premature perhaps, but not fabricated. Tesla's internal emails, while expressing doubt, did not deny the proposal's possibility. As for the alleged misuse of national data, the defense dismissed it as entirely unfounded, pointing out that no official source had confirmed any breach. The tone outside the courthouse, crowds swelled as protesters held signs reading, "Free the future" and "You can't jail innovation." Others chanted, "Accountability for all," turning the streets into a battleground of ideals. Inside, Judge Roberts maintained his neutrality, though even he couldn't ignore the magnetic presence Musk commanded in the room. The defense rested, the air thick with tension. Then, in an unexpected moment, Musk turned to the public gallery and declared, "I may be on trial, but so is the idea that boldness should be punished." A gasp rippled through the courtroom as Musk took his seat, folding his hands. The space was no longer merely a stage for legal arguments. It had transformed into a theater of ideology, where law clashed with ambition and justice stood poised to choose between order and vision. Silence hung heavy in the air after Musk's impassioned words. Judge Roberts, known for his stoic demeanor and meticulous judgment, appeared momentarily unsettled by the tech mogul's defense. His hands rested on the sides of his chair as he absorbed Musk's remarks, a rare reaction for someone of Roberts's stature. To be moved by a defendant's rhetoric was uncommon for Judge Roberts. Yet here was Musk, a billionaire with an unyielding belief in his own vision, challenging the very principles Roberts had upheld throughout his judicial career. Though the judge sat motionless, his mind raced. He had witnessed countless CEOs, politicians, and billionaires pass through his courtroom. But Musk was different. He wasn't merely another wealthy figure navigating corporate law. He was a disruptor, a visionary who had redefined the status quo. And now he stood before the court, asking for leniency, not despite his boldness, but because of it. Could a judge be swayed by passion and charisma and an unshakable belief in one's own purpose? Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy escalated. News vans packed the streets, and journalists eagerly awaited every new development. Musk's defense had dominated headlines, sparking debates across news outlets. Analysts dissected his words. Some hailed them as a masterstroke of public relations, while others accused him of attempting to manipulate public sentiment. Yet amid the chaos, whispers of admiration emerged. Musk's approach was unconventional, but it had captured the imagination of millions. The courtroom had transformed into a stage where ideals clashed and visions stood trial, an extension of the public stage where business, politics, and law collided in a spectacular and unpredictable display. Social media erupted with hashtags like "was Musk for freedom" and "disrupt the court," while forums buzzed with heated debates over the legitimacy of his actions. Was he a visionary striving to break free from a corrupt system, or a reckless billionaire who had simply gone too far? Back in the courtroom, Judge Roberts glanced up from his notes, his eyes briefly meeting Musk's. It was clear, this was no longer just about the law, it was about legacy. The decision he made would not only define the trial, but could also leave an indelible mark on the future of innovation and justice. How future generations of tech entrepreneurs, innovators, and dreamers would be treated by the justice system, now hung in the balance. For the first time, Roberts' usual composure seemed to waver, his mind caught between upholding the rule of law and acknowledging the disruptive force Musk represented. The courtroom had become an ideological battleground, where the traditional pillars of the legal system faced off against a man who symbolized the new era of technology and ambition. The prosecution was quick to strike back against Musk's passionate defense, underscoring the gravity of his actions. Their argument was clear. Musk had deliberately misled investors, manipulated stock prices, and jeopardized the economy, all for personal gain. His tweets were not mere spontaneous musings, they were deliberate and reckless actions that shook the very foundations of the financial system. Yet the media storm outside was impossible to ignore. The hashtag #Elon trial was trending globally, with celebrities, influencers, and even former employees of Musk's companies weighing in on the controversy. Some defended Musk, arguing that his boldness was exactly what the world needed to drive progress. Others condemned his lack of accountability, insisting that no one, no matter how visionary, should be above the law. Inside the courtroom, Judge Roberts remained focused, yet the weight of the public's gaze was palpable. Judge Roberts began to feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. He wasn't merely judging a man, he was defining the future of what it meant to be a disruptive force in modern society. Could someone like Musk, with his unchecked ambition and unorthodox methods, ever truly exist within the boundaries of the law? The day of the final verdict had arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with attention heavier than ever before. As Judge Roberts entered, the room fell silent, every eye fixed on him, eager to hear the outcome of the trial that had captured global attention for weeks. The stakes had never been higher, a monumental decision that would resonate far beyond those four walls. A billion-dollar empire hung in the balance, but so too did the future of how society would perceive and regulate the actions of the world's wealthiest individuals. Musk sat at the defendant's table, his expression calm and unyielding despite the storm of criticism, protests, and mounting pressure. Throughout the trial, he had remained steadfast while his defense team painted him as a misunderstood innovator, someone who merely pushed the boundaries of possibility, even if it meant skirting the edges of legality. His supporters, those who viewed him as a champion of progress, continued to rally behind him, holding their breath for the final decision. Judge Roberts, his face stern and unflinching, prepared to deliver the verdict that would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. Judge Roberts cleared his throat and began to speak. After careful consideration of all the evidence, testimonies, and arguments presented, this court finds Elon Musk guilty of financial manipulation, insider trading, and other related charges. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Musk's supporters sat in stunned silence while his critics released a collective sigh of relief. It seemed, for a moment, that justice had been served, but the sense of finality was short-lived as Judge Roberts continued, his tone shifting. However, he began, given the extraordinary circumstances and the undeniable impact of Musk's technological innovations and his charitable contributions toward space exploration and clean energy, the court hereby imposes a sentence of probation rather than incarceration. The room fell eerily silent, as if everyone was collectively processing the weight of what had just been declared. A multi-billion-dollar empire, groundbreaking technologies, and a legacy destined for the history books, all of it now hung by a thread. Musk's expression remained unreadable. He understood that the legal battle was far from over. He had escaped prison, but his reputation had taken a severe hit, and the repercussions of this trial would shadow him for the rest of his life. Yet something else was stirring, just as Judge Roberts prepared to adjourn the case. An unexpected twist shattered the courtroom's tense silence. The doors swung open, and a young woman, previously unknown to the public, stepped inside. She was an anonymous whistleblower, a former insider who had worked closely with Musk's companies and possessed first-hand knowledge of their inner workings. "I have new evidence," she announced, her voice steady yet charged with emotion. The room froze, every gaze locked on her as she approached the bench and handed a thick stack of documents to the judge. A fresh wave of uncertainty swept through the courtroom. What did this new evidence contain? Was it about to change everything? Judge Roberts hesitated, his gaze fixed on the stack of documents with a blend of confusion and curiosity. Musk's defense. Teams sprang into action, but the surprise revelation had clearly shaken their confidence. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the electricity of the unknown. No one could predict where this unexpected twist would lead. Would it exonerate Musk or unearth even more damning secrets? The trial's final moments were poised to unravel in ways no one had anticipated, as the courtroom stood on the brink of a new chapter, one marked by intrigue, secrets, and revelations. What lay within those documents, and would it change everything? Would Musk be able to continue his journey, or was this just the beginning of his downfall? The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted dramatically, from tense anticipation to a whirlwind of chaos and confusion. Everyone, from the defense attorneys to the prosecutors, was now fixated on the young woman who had entered with bombshell evidence. The silence that followed her arrival was almost surreal, as if the world itself had paused to grasp the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The documents she presented had the power to change everything, the entire course of the trial and potentially even the trajectory of Musk's legacy. Elon Musk's future Judge Roberts, looking more bewildered than ever, scanned the papers in his hands. His usual calm demeanor had been replaced by an edge of uncertainty. The defense team quickly huddled together, whispering urgently among themselves. They knew that this new evidence could either clear Musk of all charges or bury him deeper into legal jeopardy than anyone had anticipated. Musk's legal team immediately tried to dismiss the documents, claiming they were irrelevant or tampered with. However, after a long pause, Judge Roberts overruled the objection. "These will be reviewed," he declared firmly. "We will adjourn briefly for the prosecution and defense to examine these files in detail." The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, stirring murmurs of speculation. The young woman, who had remained hidden in the shadows until now, stepped forward to reveal her involvement. She introduced herself as a former employee of Musk's companies, a brilliant data scientist who had worked closely on some of his most ambitious projects. Despite possessing crucial information, she had stayed silent throughout the trial. Until now. But now something had compelled her to break her silence. "I worked for Musk's companies for several years," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "During that time, I gained access to sensitive data and internal communications that raised serious concerns." Her gaze swept across the room, the tension palpable. "What I found could change everything you think you know about this case." The prosecutor, already grasping the potential magnitude of her words, leaned forward. "What exactly is in these documents?" he asked, his tone sharp with anticipation. With deliberate calm, the young woman explained that the evidence she uncovered suggested many of Musk's high-profile innovations, including some of his most publicized product launches and major tech investments, were not as revolutionary as they seemed. In fact, several of the key patents and Musk's companies, she alleged, had patented technologies based on ideas and research that were secretly copied or stolen from other companies and individuals. Furthermore, she claimed that Musk had knowingly manipulated market values through insider trading, using privileged information to make strategic decisions that benefited him and his enterprises, while leaving thousands of smaller investors at a severe disadvantage. The revelations were staggering. This was no longer merely a case of financial mismanagement or isolated illegal deals. It was a systematic manipulation of both the market and the broader tech industry. The courtroom erupted into chaos, tension crackling through the air as everyone struggled to grasp the sheer magnitude of what had just been exposed. Musk, who had been brimming with confidence only moments earlier, now sat motionless, his gaze fixed on the floor, while his defense team frantically scrambled to prepare a response. But it was clear that this new development threatened to unravel everything Musk's defense team had constructed over the course of the trial. As the judge pored over the documents, the gravity of the moment settled heavily over the courtroom. The future of Musk's empire now hung in the balance, and the world watched with bated breath as this unprecedented twist unfolded. Would these bombshell revelations spell the end of Musk's career, or would he somehow manage to escape unscathed once again, and unscathed once again? The courtroom was in turmoil, the fate of one of the world's most powerful men hanging by a thread. A wave of hushed conversations rippled through the room, a blend of disbelief, shock, and raw curiosity thickening the air. The bombshell evidence had sent shockwaves across the legal world, challenging everything previously assumed about the case. But now the moment of truth had arrived. Judge Roberts, his face pale and contemplative, raised his gavel once more, commanding silence. "We will now proceed to closing statements," he announced, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around him. Yet even his composed exterior couldn't fully mask the intensity of the moment, of what had just transpired. What was once considered a straightforward case had transformed into one of the most complex and high-profile trials of the decade. Musk's defense team appeared visibly shaken. The powerful revelations from the young whistleblower had fractured their once airtight defense. Desperate to regain control, they attempted to discredit the new evidence, dismissing it as fabricated or the work of a disgruntled former employee. But despite their best efforts, the cracks in their argument were becoming too glaring to ignore. Seizing the moment, the prosecutor, now emboldened by the whistleblower's testimony, delivered a closing statement with newfound conviction, a statement that struck at the very core of the case. "The evidence presented today is not just circumstantial. It's damning," the prosecutor declared firmly. "What we have uncovered is that Elon Musk, a man idolized by millions, may have built his empire on a foundation of deception, manipulation, and exploitation. It's time for the truth to be heard, for the world to see Musk for who he truly is." Musk, who had been sitting silently, appearing as though he had aged a decade in just a few hours, finally spoke up. His voice, once brimming with confidence, now wavered. "This is a setup," he proclaimed, his eyes flashing with that familiar arrogance that had once propelled him to tech superstardom. "I built everything from the ground up. These accusations are false, and I'll fight them with everything I have." But the damage had already been done. The prosecutor pressed on, asserting that the weight of the evidence was undeniable. The jury, once divided in their opinions of Musk, now seemed to lean decisively toward the compelling case laid before them. The world watched as the monumental trial neared its final moments, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity, but when they returned, their verdict was swift and unequivocal, guilty on multiple counts, but it also exposed the cracks in the carefully crafted public image he had maintained for years. In a single, decisive blow, Musk had gone from tech mogul to convicted felon, his career seemingly irreparably tarnished. In the aftermath, the media swarmed the story with headlines blaring Elon Musk's fall from grace, while social media erupted with reactions from supporters and critics alike. Questions lingered. Was this the end of Musk's dominance in the tech world? Could he ever rebuild his reputation, or would he finally face the consequences of his actions? Meanwhile, the young whistleblower became a polarizing figure, a hero. To some, a target to others. Her decision to speak out had not only altered the course of the trial, but perhaps even the trajectory of the entire tech industry. One thing was certain: the repercussions of this trial would echo for years, changing the lives of everyone involved. The fall of Elon Musk was more than just the collapse of a billionaire. It was a stark reminder that no one is beyond the reach of accountability.